And I think I wonder, I mean, this is a question and perhaps something for your podcast listeners to think about is what social media and this idea of immediacy is having on our ability and our capacity to be curious.
That was the voice of Leanne Sobel, the guest on this episode of The Knowledge Mill. I'm your host, Greg Yoakum. Leanne Sobel is a strategic designer, educator, and researcher. She is currently the Director of Strategic Design at Snowmelt and an Adjunct Fellow at the University of Technology Sydney Business School. Leanne brings a wealth of experience to her practice, having worked on public and private sector projects over her 20-plus year career, including working in diverse domains such as design education, experiential design, place-based strategy, innovation, management consulting, organizational strategy, and design thinking. Leanne holds a Bachelor of Design from Swinburne University, Master of Management from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management, and a PhD of Management from UTS, in which she investigated the role of design in strategy. Leanne is an experienced training facilitator of executive education, specialising in strategic design, strategy, complexity, and organisational change. She teaches in the UTS Executive MBA and has extensive experience in design-led workshop facilitation for strategy, organisational challenges, and innovation initiatives. She is also a member of the UTS Centre for Climate Risk and Resilience, UTS Change for Good, and the UTS Innovation and Entrepreneurship Collaborative. Leanne is the first repeat guest I've had on The Knowledge Mill, and more importantly, is a close friend and valued colleague of mine. Since she was featured in the second episode of the podcast, a conversation that we recorded in November 2022, she has completed her PhD and moved into her current roles with Snowmelt and UTS. To get a recording done before her PhD was officially conferred, we actually sat down to speak earlier in 2025, and I've held on to that recording so this episode could be the finale for 2025. The 2 years between drinks proved a valuable opportunity for both of us to reflect on how some things, like studies, projects, and jobs, change, while other things, like friendships, hold steady. I warmly wish you all a happy holiday season. See you in 2026. This episode of The Knowledge Mill was recorded in my office at UTS on May 2nd, 2025. Show notes, including links to more information on some of the topics that Leanne and I discuss, can be found at theknowledgemill.com/episode 26. That's episode and the numerals 2 and 6. Hello, Leanne.
Hello, Greg.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And this will be a bit of a catch-up.
Yes.
Because we haven't actually seen each other in a little while. The last I heard from, well, the last listeners heard from you, you were about to do stage 2, which here at UTS is approval to go into the field and collect your data. But you'd already done that at that point. You were, as I recall, searching for data saturation.
Yes, that's right.
You were lost in the grounded theory forest.
Yeah, that was me.
But as we just terrified each other by remembering, that was 2.5 years ago that we sat down and had that chat. And a lot has happened in the time since, including just since I saw you about a month or two ago.
Yeah. I mean, that time lapse is quite shocking, but I think is also probably part of this PhD experience, I suppose, and then coming out of it, because even the last year and a half feels like a blur.
Yeah.
Feels like a month, but actually hasn't been.
And it's also one of those things which you're in the midst of now.
Yes.
Where there's a lot of endings.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just one ending after another.
Yeah.
And then finally, I feel like the actual official, it feels like it's done ending is when if you go to your graduation ceremony. And,
yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. No, I know I had a little ending, but it's actually a really big ending, but it's not the official ending, just a week and a half ago, where I received a notice from the Graduate Research School saying that the documentation, the thesis has been approved, it's going to the committee for final sign-off. So at that point, I will get another note, I'm assuming, around conferral. And then sometime in September, so a few months down the track, I should graduate.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yay.
That's where I was always a little unclear on when you were officially Dr. So-and-so.
Yes.
But I think that it's on your conferral date.
Yeah.
So you have that in the letter, and then your conferral date, and then sometime after that you do the graduation.
Yeah, but somebody told me that you're kind of carrying this strange status between being a doctor and a really a doctor, because you've got this moment where you've been conferred, but you have to have the proper graduation to then carry the title. So there's some interim status, and I don't know what that is, and I'm sure I'll Google it shortly after chatting to you and some of your listeners, and maybe like, yes, I know exactly what that status is. So that'll be me shortly.
Brilliant, because the last time I saw you had just got back your reviewer comments.
Yes.
And you were pleased. That was a good result.
Yes.
Are you able to share some of that, your feelings at that time?
Yeah, well, relief. I think that was the biggest moment in this PhD experience, was that, getting my results. So I passed, yay. And my two examiners who are located internationally both gave me some really great feedback and comments to make some amendments, but one of my examiners said you don't need to amend anything, but gave really great feedback about how I could improve my thesis papers. So because my thesis is a compilation, and that means I've got 3 papers within that. So I'm seeking to get those published, and the feedback was to attend to those or related to those. And my second examiner gave me some really constructive comments for amendments, which weren't extensive. But I think by the time you get to that stage in the PhD process, it's like, oh, I have to go back into that thing. And it's a little bit painful, but I have to say that those comments and recommendations were really awesome. So in the end, I was really happy to do that work, and I feel like it strengthened my thesis overall. And not only that, both of them and their comments have given me great fodder for future thinking. And I really like how one of my reviewers actually said, just remember you're joining a conversation with others. And so she offered up her advice or comments or questions even in that spirit, which was great. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's kind of a perfect outcome, because that's not even just the punctuation mark on the PhD. That's also looking ahead and kind of contextual and reminding yourself that the work's not over.
And the work's not over. And I don't think it's ever going to be over. It's not over for the rest of my life, probably. But that's also, I think, just the tyranny of having a curious mind too. Yeah, that's right. The work never stops in that way. No.
Well, that's because you have. Maybe I want to ask you about this later, but you've already stepped into a new role.
Yes.
Even before you submitted there, so you have quite a few things happening at once.
Yeah.
And so I can understand when you said that you were reluctant to go back into the thesis when you got your comments. I relate very hard to that, because I had a similar thing when I got mine back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even, I think in the end I knocked over the responses to the comments in one work day, just in bits and bobs, but I kicked that can down the road. So, because I was just, I'd gotten all the way out of it, and then I didn't really want to get all the way back in. And I was teaching at the time casually, doing a lot of shoots and marking. And then when I finally did, I was like, oh, so I really should have just done that 3 months ago.
Yeah.
But I relate.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to one of our mutual friends, and he said to me he sat with his comments for about a week or so and then just knocked it over in a week. So my expectations were set from there. But I think the most challenging part was, look, I opened my my results and celebrated and put it away for a week, and then opened it back up, and then realized that the examiner who gave me comments to make amendments had written it in a beautiful narrative, which she offered up in lieu of a viva, which we don't have here. So the examination process is it feels quite transactional. So a lot of the feedback that she gave me was also, asking questions of me to think about some of the findings and how I would consider them in light of what I know now at the end of the research project, and would I have framed my questions in different ways to begin with, and things like that. So it was also a matter of me going through that feedback and sort of untangling what it meant substantially to the thesis.
Yeah.
But then I had a very practical list of just things I had to change. So I think just going through that and re-engaging myself with my own thesis, but also I was invited to engage with some additional literature that I had not yet. So that took time, and I wanted to really genuinely engage with those comments in that way. So I think that just took a little bit of time. So yeah, in the end it was like probably a couple of weeks and back and forth with my supervisors, and I'm working at the same time. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What is nice, I guess, about that point is because you get that initial result, the reviewer comments come back, and this will be different for every uni, so I'm just giving a bit of context for the listeners. You get those results back, and you know at that point, the only person who needs to sign off is your supervisor.
Yeah.
And so you know you're going to finish.
Yes. Yeah.
So it sort of takes off the anxiety, and that allows you then to have kind of those higher level abstract thoughts about it.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. I think that moment too was probably the special moment, the marking moment of the end of the thesis, because it also is the time when my supervisors feel some sort of relief too, and in celebration with me, because up until that point I've been in their care, so to speak, or under their supervision. And so for them, I guess getting those external reviewer comments is also, there's a bit of hesitance or energy behind that. So I think that was great, because when I did receive it, it was like everyone was sharing their thoughts and feeling relief. So and for me that was really important, because I did treat this whole PhD experience as something that wasn't just me doing it. I couldn't have gone into it with that mindset. It was like, I am doing it, but I'm also doing this with a team around me, and having that sense all the way through was really important. And I was lucky that my panel was really great, always there for me and available. I know others don't necessarily always get that experience, but for me that was really important to have a team like that. And so when I got those results, it was like, yay. It really did feel like it wasn't just me celebrating. I mean, I was by myself because I was working from home that day, but we were all kind of chatting and talking to each other about it. So
that's brilliant. I hadn't thought about it like that before, actually, that your supervisors would also not be 100% certain.
Yes.
Because they sort of get locked into because you always cross. The interesting thing about a PhD, I think, is that at a certain point, provided all things are going well, at a certain point, you know more about your project than your supervisors.
Yeah.
You cross a threshold and you are more expert than they are. And so, they start by instructing you, and then they end by hearing from you.
Yes.
And so it's sort of like you're taking each other's word for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I always knew that they were in it with me, and I think the moment of telling was one of my supervisors responded to me when I said, "Oh, I'm crying," and she was like, "Yes, I'm crying too." So it was like this sense of all of the emotions at once flooding in, and it wasn't just me feeling that.
Yeah, that's awesome though. What a nice moment.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, that's it. The way that I wanted this conversation to go was because we've spoken to each other about the work.
Yes.
And so I wanted to catch up as friends, but also you as a guest on the podcast, and hear about your reflections on the overall journey. And so you were saying that your reviewers gave you some comments sort of prompting you to be reflective in that way. So maybe that would be a good place to start. Yeah.
One of my examiners, in the spirit of, we don't have a viva, was asking a few different questions about how I had undertaken my study and would I have changed anything about it. And I think there were two things that stand out for me about that. One was for me to consider how I might elaborate my findings and conclusions with some thought to what did I find most surprising in my results. And the other one was around the framing of the research question. So would I change the framing? So my research question was, what is the role of design and strategy? And the question, and the reason why I was asking that question was to say, well, you have a much better sense of ideas that people have these, identities and thinking and ways of working, and perhaps framing it around roles was a bit, it was looking at design or assuming that design had a specific role, but perhaps it was more about people's identities and work and how they undertake design. And so it was a more open framing perhaps. And so, I think, I've thought a lot about that, and that came up as I was going around and sharing my work in conferences. Is the framing of roles the right kind of framing? And of course, I wouldn't change the the research question after I'd done a whole thesis.
Well,
but
we would all change our research question if we knew exactly what we were going to find.
But it was a really great question because I already have ideas for a paper that's looking into identity of strategists and strategic designers, and it pointed to that. And I've read lots of articles talking about how people come into their work and how people perceive the work as being how to do the work is actually very wrapped up in identity.
Yeah.
And it also is this. There has been a bit of a movement or an essence in design literature in business where it's a bit like, well, design should be in business more. And this, I guess these questions are also setting up how I frame then my work to not have to take that approach at all. It's to say, well, people are working in these ways because of where we find ourselves in the world, and to explore it very, at a different level. And so that was really awesome. So it's kind of changed my thinking about the topic a lot.
Yeah. And it gives you some new directions to go off and explore as well. Yeah,
totally. And I think it's helped bring a richness to my overall conceptualization of the topic. And I was really struggling with some of those aspects of the research, particularly because I'm looking across two very distinct disciplines, and I'm trying to put together some sort of transdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary perspectives about this. And, often there's this kind of design versus strategy kind of approaches, but actually it's not about that at all. And my research found that and so I think there's contributions to be made at that intersect, and to try and give some sort of language and ideas around, well, what this merging of skills is across disciplines and how you can talk about it in a more agnostic way. It's not this or that. It's a number of different things actually because of these reasons.
Yeah. Would you indulge me in telling a little story about something that happened at the end of my PhD along this same line? Because it's actually conceptually connected to this as well. And I find this, what you're describing, that intersection, really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because there's sort of two big things happening there. One is all of us are designers.
Yeah.
We all design things. When we get up in the morning and pick our outfit, we've designed something.
Yes.
So we all have a non-zero design competency.
Yeah.
And put it in practice all the time. And that's why design is basically the oldest field in human history, because we've been designing since the dawning of our species, or the dawn of our species, I should say. And so there's that we are all designers, and then the rest is context.
Yeah.
But also this idea that if the goal of using design in a management context was for everyone to develop as designers, well, then eventually everyone would end up, we'd only have design firms.
Yeah.
If everyone was an expert designer.
Yeah.
And if that's all we ever did.
Or none at all, because they wouldn't be seeing a need for it, because that's inherent in what and how we are in life, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so I feel this is where it ties into my thesis. I had this idea at the end of my thesis, and it was a future direction for study. And the idea was there is expert design, and there are levels of design competency. You start as a beginner, obviously, become a novice, intermediate, all the way up to expert. But if you're trying to be a designer, then you're only stopping at each level of competency just transitionally. You don't get into design because you want to stay at the novice level, basically. You want to eventually get to expert. And so everyone on the design side of things is a straight line from the bottom to the top. Whether they get there or not is a different question, but that's the goal. And so on the management side, that's not the goal, because as we said, if everybody was a design expert, well, now we're not even doing whatever it was we were doing before, running a cricket club or what have you. And so it's important then to maintain people at different levels of design expertise, to have maybe a few that are experts, a few that are intermediate, a few novice, a few beginner. And that, of course, contributes to a diversity of perspectives in the design process. That you have some people who still have that green kind of 1 foot out the door perspective on things, and other people who are buried in it. And so the way that I designed this in my thesis and sort of suggested this as a direction for future research was I had what we ended up, me and my panel, calling the circles.
Right.
And listeners can't see, I just
that
did scare quotes
around. That sounds very
around.
Design appropriate. The circles.
And it was basically just layers like an onion of the design competencies. On the one side, I had the expert designers with the straight lines as I described. And on the other side, I had people stopping at different levels. And I said, this would be worth looking into. And we were never able to include that in a publication because I was publishing my papers as I went, knowing I wanted to go into academia. So we were never able to sort of fit it into one of the papers, but I always really liked the idea. And I had it in the end, and everyone kept saying, like, this isn't really developed. I don't know, like, maybe you don't want to have it in there, but I kept leaving it in draft after draft, and then we get to the end, and finally my principal supervisor says, look, it's your thesis, so if you want to leave the circles in, then fine. But I don't know what's going to happen here. And then when I got my reviewer comments back, one of the reviewers went out of their way to be like, I'm really fascinated by this idea. The circles.
You found your person.
And I felt so vindicated. Someone else out there was into it as well. But that speaks to the thing you were saying before about how even your panel gets a little too close to what you're doing. And it's about, does this fit versus, kind of that next level thinking of where this might go conceptually.
And I think it's interesting because I had a similar experience with some of these, how I kind of conceptualized my findings. And because I was dealing with a lot of complex subject matter, it got to the end and I had to simplify it. And I was a bit bummed out about that. But and the advice I got from one of my supervisors was, you're just going to have to do that. And I did, but some of this feedback really helped me to consider how some of that complexity might arrive in another paper and in which way it might be framed. So it's like, okay, so I knew I was onto something. But like equally that advice was bang on from my supervisor. And now I've got my examiner comments. There is an avenue where I can develop that, where it totally makes sense. And I have a body of literature where that would go. So, totally.
Maybe this will be a good opportunity to segue into talking about the work you've started doing.
Yes.
Because I'd be interested to know if when you first took this job, and I'll let you explain the job.
Yes.
But when you first took it, you were saying to me that you were very interested in, because you want to be a pracademic. That's sort of your perspective, and you wear that as a badge of honor, that identity.
Yes.
And so is this something that your employers are interested in too? Might you be able to do this work in that way?
Yes. And I'll start by saying where I am now. So I'm working for a systemic design consultancy, strategy consultancy, and we are called Snowmelt. And we are a small team of people who are very interested in the intersect of design, strategy, and systems thinking. And so I knew Tim, one of my now colleagues, through the design industry here in Sydney, and it just sort of happened that as I was finishing my PhD, they had a role going, and we started talking, and it was a really great opportunity and great timing and great mix of skills. And so, I joined them, which is great and very exciting. But Tim has a PhD in systems thinking design, and so he's already been engaged in academic writing and academic work through his experiences, but has, like me, always worked in industry, strategy, consulting, and but sees the value in the intersect between those two worlds, between academia and industry practice. And so the conversations that we were having when I was joining was just that. It was like, there's this general interest in doing great work with client partners on really important, sticky, complex challenges. But equally, we can do that utilising our research experience, wearing the doctor's hats, and collaborate with industry academic partners, universities, which they have already done. So that's already been baked into their approach.
Yeah, fantastic.
Their value proposition, which is great. And so now that I'm on the team, we can kind of keep going with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that slots into exactly what you always described wanting to do.
Yeah.
So I was very happy for you when you got that job. And interestingly, since when we spoke last on the podcast, I recorded my first 2 episodes on the same day. So it was the very first day one of the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was still figuring out what I wanted this to be. And that sent me off speaking to different people in different industries. And since I spoke to you, I've spoken to people in HR, and I've spoken to people in sport management. They all, there's a handful of them who are very adamant about being pracademics. Like they think this is the future. And certainly the statistics tell us that there's only one academic job for every 10 PhDs granted.
Yeah.
And certainly doing a PhD is not the kind of thing that you do just because.
Yeah. Just for kicks.
Yeah.
There has to be some driver behind it, that's for
right.
sure.
But it is effectively research training.
It is.
And so if you can't find a way to do research, then it's not terribly useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me, and I'm not sure exactly how much I went into that to this in the last conversation, but my whole career has been working in two worlds in a way. Like I started working in a design school, and I had an industry role in that design school. So my role was literally to bring in industry people to connect with students, and it was all about jobs, making sure we were informed with how practice was changing so that we could change curriculum. And so because of that experience, I think I've just it's ingrained in me, in my psyche around, well, what does it mean to contribute to the world, and what does it mean to work? And I think that was really formative. But as I've worked in industry, I've maintain links. So I've either just lectured, or I've done some course writing with various universities, or I've gone back into professional roles in academic institutions. So I've always had this kind of messy interplay. My career is not at all linear, but it always, and it may still be the case, but I've had so many conversations with people, particularly in the last three years as I've been going through PhD education, is, well, which way are you going to go? Are you going to go into academia, or are you going to go into practice? And it's always been very black and white.
Yeah, one or the other.
One or the other. And my answer has always been, well, why not both?
Yeah.
And I know, particularly because I come from a field of design, meeting business, the learning is in the doing.
Yeah.
If you're not teaching in some sort of practice lab space, then you're not effectively teaching design, because design is all about that. And so it's always had this mash of practice to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, of course, that's a natural place for particularly someone in my field to be. But universities equally are trying really hard to become more industry relevant. So that college I started working at, it was much more of a practitioner based college. It came out of the vocational training world, but they ended up delivering degrees. So their ethos was already sort of that way.
Yeah.
But universities have not tended to be like that. And I think the way that they're structured makes industry engagement particularly difficult.
Yeah.
And first-hand experiencing that working here at the Design Innovation Research Centre, where we're working with industry, bringing in projects, doing research on them, but also equally doing consulting work, basically. And that was possible because it was constructed to do that. But elsewhere, it's been challenging, and that's my experience having worked elsewhere. It's not impossible. It's just it works in very different ways. It's not as easy to facilitate. So for me, in that, I think there's a whole lot of opportunity because educational institutions, I can't get my words right. It's Friday afternoon, late in the afternoon. That's right. Thanks so much for that, Greg. Academic institutions are trying to innovate their practices to be more industry engaged because that's what students want. Students want the practical experiences. The flip side of that, and for me, or like, why would you take a PhD on? Yes, becoming a researcher. But for me, it became incredibly difficult or increasingly difficult to be able to teach without a PhD.
Yeah.
So I've been teaching on undergraduate programs, master's level programs, and even executive MBA programs for a number of years, which technically speaking, you're not meant to have done, but because of my industry practice experience, particularly in the developing field of design thinking, strategic design, it kind of needs practitioners to come in and share what's the latest, what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to do that work with that experience behind me. But now, because of accreditation, it's much harder to do that. It's much harder for universities to facilitate experienced practitioners to meet the requirements and the standards. So, it's a give and take, but that's also been a motivator for me to get that qualification so I can continue to do the work in the way that I feel is most giving and useful in developing the field, for sure.
And it's brilliant that you found an employer that is on board with all of this. And I think design lends itself to this as well, because expert designers are not only going through their practice designing things, they're also constantly reflecting upon that practice. And so they kind of have an academic been to what they do already in that sense.
Yeah, well, it is. Design research is core to design practice. It's all about reflection in and on action, as Donald Schoen wrote about many years ago, and that is the basis of what it means to be a designer. So research is baked in, understanding problems is baked in, and curiosity and synthesizing big insights is baked into the practice. So yeah, I think you're right in that sense. Yeah, totally.
I've seen in different fields, like I said before, I spoke to people in HR and sport management and other fields who also want to be pracademics, because there's been kind of this trend, for lack of a better word, but also calls for more of this crossover, more of the pracademic approach.
Our government here was talking a lot about being job ready, and universities really pushing their responsibility in making sure that students would come out of universities being ready to be employed, and that they had to go into industries where there were jobs. So they were seeing universities very much as job training.
Yeah, which it's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a place for that. So vocational training is about job training. It's about apprenticeships. It's about very much that intersect of practitioner and industry work, and it is about jobs. It's about getting people into critical roles like nursing, and although nursing has degree programs and things now, but care-based roles and industries and building and construction and all that kind of stuff. But in that push, I think there is an assumption around critical thinking and research and, arts, social sciences, all of those research, all of those disciplines suddenly not holding any value because they don't necessarily guarantee you a job. And what's missed in that whole conversation is it affords a whole population to have understanding of history, understanding of the arts, understanding of critical studies, to then bring forward other industries or have a voice in conversations that bring a richness to what's going on. And so I think a lot of the tensions between industry and academia and how it's changing, I think, is also born out of that kind of idea. It's a very economic way of seeing the world. It's like, well, we need people who can just get in and do the jobs rather than thinking about it in terms of we need people to be able to think about our culture and society and what are we here to do and how are we looking after ourselves and the planet and how do we value arts and the histories and understanding ourselves now, but also who we might become in the future. None of that sort of falls into that job ready status. It's like,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, I think it's partly a framing issue and how.
Yeah. Employers have backed themselves into a corner with it as well by doing things like requiring a certain amount of experience that students may or may not have in a field where you might be better served to hire someone like you're talking about that's more well-rounded and critically engaged and has an understanding of history and context. And, in the design context, of course, there are a lot of problems we've already solved.
Yeah.
Or there were attempts to solve them that were unsuccessful. And so if you go along and try to do them again because you didn't have that historical understanding that someone's been there and done that before and it didn't work for XYZ reasons, well, then you're just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, totally.
So, you could take their learnings and then start again, but you have to have that historical knowledge to do that in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like on the flip side, I work for an organization, a company, a team that really values research and ideas and thinking and putting out their positions and contributions that help articulate new methods and ways of thinking about design and contributions to society. But also there is a practical reality that in order to run a business, you need to be, working on projects that are paid and so it does limit thinking time, but that is also the role of universities. So if that's not protected, then who's doing that thinking time? And so, I think that rolls into how universities have been, treated like the businesses, and is that the right framing for universities more generally? And so I think we're kind of living through really interesting times relating to knowledge work.
Yes.
But I still think, given that knowledge work also is critical to businesses and the world, people of the world making really good decisions about our future, then, finding ways to mesh the two, I think, are really important. And I think it's framing it broader than being job ready. It's about framing it as people having really strong critical thinking skills to be able to not just assume what they read as what's right. They're actually saying, well, hang on, let's think about this. Or why are we doing this as a company? Why are we doing this as a group of people? Yeah. Like maybe we could be doing this in a different way and we're making more ethical choices and all that kind of stuff.
This is what I tell kids in the HR subject that I teach, where we talk about things like performance appraisals, etc. That in this class, sure, we could do mock performance appraisals. We could sit down and we could act it out and I could teach you best practice.
Yeah.
But more useful would be to critique best practice. Yeah. And give you that toolkit of coming into a context and being able to understand, all right, the mission and vision of the organization is this. Their organizational values are here. Yeah. And the strategy for achieving all of this aligned with those values is this. Yeah. Is what they're doing fit for purpose then? Yeah. What can I bring in? Like that's going to be, you're more useful to any organization you work for if you can do that. Yes. Come in and assess and improve, then come in and just do what they say.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just not the reality of work. I mean, you every day you don't know what you're going to encounter. It's going to throw you a curveball. And I'm sure in HR that's constant. You're dealing with people and people are, multifaceted and not predictable. And so you need to be able to think on your feet. So it's essential.
Yeah, that's right. And so the other subject that I teach, as you know, because you taught in it for me, is a design thinking subject. And that's the only class. It's my favorite one to teach because it's the only one. It's called Innovation Lab. So it's right there in the name. This is a laboratory. Yeah. This is, it's one of my weird academic ideals is I'd rather just every assignment be reflections.
Yeah.
And just do like at the end, let's have a conversation and you tell me what you learned and it's just pass fail.
Yeah.
That would be how I would like to teach. But,
Yes.
that doesn't fit into these structures that we have.
Yeah.
But this is the class that comes the closest because they are doing design thinking. And so they're mostly management students. Sometimes I get the odd DAB or biotech or someone from more diverse fields, but it's the only class I think where they do that. If they're management students, the only class where they do that much reflection, and where I'm constantly asking them to do a thing, but then I'm going around to their tables asking them, but why, but why, so what, who cares, who's this for, why that instead of this? They start off nervous and feeling like I'm coming after them. Yeah. And by the end of the semester, so many of them write in their feedback surveys, they wish they could go back and start it again. Yeah. Now that they know, quote unquote, how to do it. Yeah. Because they see the value at the end. Yes. And they know that was their one shot. And unfortunately, it's past now. Yeah. So I'm glad that they see it in the end. Yes. But I would like to just flip a switch at the beginning and we can all... But they're so not used to thinking that way. I think it speaks to the rigid structures and the assessment formats that we use to write essays and do reports and case studies, all of which have their value. Yeah. But what's the value of doing a 20th case study in the structure of your course versus getting your hands dirty? And
it's really interesting, and I actually think that this is a really important reflection about the distinctions between business and design students, and therefore also management and design people in work, because there is a distinct difference around how each of these more generally approach work from a worldview kind of sensibility. Absolutely. How I go about doing my work perspective. And I think that really does come down to cultures of learning, and a lot's been written about this, but it did come up in my study a lot. And, we come into problems, situations, workplace scenarios with an expectation about how I'm going to solve a challenge. And for management, for the most part, I think a lot of the wiring is around, well, I'll go in with a point of view. I'll come in with what I know about this situation. Yeah. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, or let's get the best leading practice report from here, and here, and that's the framing around past data. That's kind of the economic analysis or the taking what we know perspective, and then we'll kind of see how we go with that.
The inductive and the deductive.
Yeah. Whereas designers tend to be like, oh, okay, well, that's curious. Let's just see what's going on here. Yeah. And that's because they're coming from exactly this lab environment which you're simulating. Cultures of learning, cultures of critique. In design, you do crits. You have your critical reviews of the work, and then you get feedback, and then you refine it, and then you come back the next time. And you don't get to the end of a design without having some sort of critical review with others or of yourself, thinking, oh, if I do this, if I change this line over here, then it might give a different type of aesthetic. So the sensibilities that come from design attune your way of thinking about problems in a different way than, say, when you're coming through a management school, you're given all the tools and economic, accounting, all of that kind of stuff, which is fine, but it just takes a very rational, technical logic into how you see the world and how to solve challenges. Yeah,
that's right. I've had students before, actually, this semester, when they're doing their initial. So one of the first things you do in the design thinking process, if you haven't heard of it before, is to explore the problem space. Yeah. Identify all the humans/users, i.e. stakeholders, in a problem space, and just, yes, you have your assumptions. Yeah. Maybe you do a little bit of desk research to get your head around the context. But you're trying to, before you even think about solving the problem, you have to define the problem. Yeah. And so one of the elements of their first assignment is to do an opportunity map.
Yeah.
which could be opportunities or problems, but we call it an opportunity map. And I have that many students ask me, like, should this just be a SWOT analysis?
Yeah. No.
Opportunities, that's the O in SWOT. I see where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but no, that is a completely different problem you're trying to solve with that tool. But that's where they're taught. If you see A, pull out B.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, I experienced that too. I've been teaching in the Executive MBA here at UTS with the Strategic Design Studio for many years, and we have a real client problem, and we have a team that has to work with real clients on challenges, and they follow the design thinking approach. And always the hardest thing to resist is to go into those project briefings with clients already having ideas about what the problem is and how to solve it. And I think that just it's just a culturally ingrained way of attending to issues in the workplace, because so often it's like, how do we put out this fire now? Let's just go with what we know.
Yeah.
And so it kind of goes against conventional wisdom to pause and say, well, hang on a second. Let's just think about this a little bit more. Let's go and talk to a few people, or let's just, do a little bit more research and spend some time thinking about this before we kind of go in with particular solutions. So, it definitely comes out of those cultures of learning and ways of thinking, and people's comfort levels with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and
right.
it's usually the first obstacle to get over in that particular course. Then I think the second one, which is a whole other topic, is collaboration. It's something that's really stuck out for me. I think we assume people know how to collaborate, work with people, but actually, and I don't know where this comes from, where or how we've got to this state, but I've observed in the last few years that that's not a given, that people actually, some people don't know how to naturally just collaborate with others. And that means listening. It means building on the ideas of others. It means, not just coming in and having one particular dominant character in teams. It's actually saying, we can do this work together. Let's kind of synthesize and think through problems. And like collaboration is everything when it comes to exploring possibilities and creativity and innovation. And I think one of the core things about that is reflection, and being reflexive and understanding who you are and what you bring into situations to actually know how to be with others. And that's really at the core of doing great management work, actually, because it's about how you relate to others. So I think it's a really interesting one.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of soft skills wrapped up in that, and we don't teach soft skills at all. We assume that they're being learned through, for example, doing group projects in a subject. And I think what would be more useful is if when you started, this is just one idea, to be clear, before, off the back of a conversation about jumping to solutions.
Yeah.
One idea that I've had is that there should be some kind of it could be a short course or like a block mode kind of thing when you first start uni. And I think that it should cover, here's how to find good sources. Yeah. I didn't know until I became a master's student what an academic journal article was. I didn't know what an academic journal was. I never engaged with that as an undergrad. I did my undergrad in the US. Yeah. Came here, and now that was what says minimum 5 academic journal articles. I literally didn't know what that was. Yeah. So now I'm on Google trying to find, now I write them, so I've come a long way from there, which is nice. But until someone came into one of my subjects in my master's from the library to show me how to access databases that I'd never heard of, let alone know how to use, that was one of those questions I didn't know to ask. Yeah. They came in and showed me these skills, and now I pass those on to my students. I always include a video in my assignment briefs to show them how to go and find these sources, and whether they watch them or not, I don't know. Yeah. But I'm very aware that there's a gap there. Yeah, like how do I explore? How do I be curious about the world, and actually how do I productively go out there and find some interesting pieces of information that might inform me beyond. And I wonder, I mean, this is a question and perhaps something for your podcast listeners to think about, is what social media and this idea of immediacy is having on our ability and our capacity to be curious, to seek out and actually go, is what I'm reading factual? Is it actually something that I can trust as a piece of information? And so I think absolutely from that point of view, particularly for students coming into the university,
having that piece of criticality. But yeah, that's an every person skill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you may not know is a blind spot of yours. You might think that because you've always had friends. So of course I'm going to go to uni and I'm going to make friends with everybody and it's just going to be like happy days.
Yeah.
But, and if that works out for you, great.
Yeah.
But it usually doesn't.
Yeah.
What if you go into a tutorial and, you're there with some people who actually are your friends, but now your tutor says, I've randomly assigned the groups.
Yeah.
And you're working with this random band of fellow students.
Yeah.
If you don't know where to, if there's no natural leader in that group, what happens?
Yeah.
Are you all just sitting there looking at each other?
I can see the development of a list of all the assumed things that we think people know before stepping into university across different levels of learning. But I mean, that's, it's just one of those things. I think we do assume that we know certain things or others do, and it's just not the case. But that is the role of universities. That's the role of any kind of education at any level, I think. So absolutely.
I do value those moments when a student comes up and they get it, for lack of a better phrase, and they're willing to engage a little beyond whatever's being discussed, or they understand why. Because I'm the kind of person that, and we'd have to have a whole other podcast episode to get into this, but ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I'm just as likely to use a reference to a movie to explain an HR concept as I am to use a sport metaphor to explain an economics concept.
Yeah.
Because that's how I can illustrate it in a way that's easy to understand. Speaking universal languages, people watch movies, people watch sports. If you're coming at things from a purely scientific perspective and you're using jargon and acronyms and assuming a lot of knowledge, then it's just, if anyone's even listening, it's just going in one ear and out the other. And I don't blame them. It would happen to me too. Like I get when people are throwing jargon at me, same thing. I can't even process it. And so I get it. And so I try to keep in mind, I try to remember that I was a very ordinary undergrad student, and that when I started my master's, I didn't know what an academic journal was. And just remember that, I've gone through all this training. I've done a PhD. I've flipped the script and I write those papers now. But if I roll my eyes every time I encounter something that's a mistake that I wouldn't make, then what am I doing? Because I'm here to help you not make those mistakes, not judge you for making them.
Exactly. Now, it's interesting. There's lots of little, I was just thinking as you were talking about how I have this distinct memory in design school when computers and using design to come up with layouts and start to illustration on things like Illustrator. Some of the tutors were saying, well, that's fine. You can do that work in the computer, but have your ideas on paper first. There's something really important about sitting down and sketching and thinking through what it is that you're doing. And it brings about a different level of creativity, a different way of engaging and thinking through the problem. So even, if, for me, it was a question of design. It wasn't a question of understanding some complex issue going on for a team that I might be working with. It's actually like, no, this is just about solving some very aesthetic, conceptual way of communicating and connecting with others. And by getting off the computer, you're able to do that work much more effectively. Once you've got drafts, of course, scan them in, do something with them there. But of course, even the capacity for people to take the time to do that is eroded as we're more and more, required to just be on the screens doing the work in that way. And I think that it's the same for how people think in the world and how they do work in the world. It's like step back from just assuming that the way you're doing things is the only way. There are many different ways of coming at problem solving in the workplace, as a manager, as a student, even how I understand concepts. And I even use that in my study. So a lot of my sense making, a lot of my synthesis happened when I was just drawing and doodling or writing notes or thinking through the content. And that was a way for me to process what I'd been looking at and the conversations I was having. And I mean, look at it frustrated my supervisors to no end. I'd throw up these conceptual diagrams on on the screen on Zoom and just say, okay, so this is what I'm thinking. They're like, I have no idea what that means. I'm like, I know you don't, but I do, and it's really helped me with my thinking. They're like, that's great, Leanne, but like, let's turn this into some sort of model or synthesis pattern. But if I actually, I think I could probably map my whole PhD journey through my sketching.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I did a little bit of that on Miro too, like even just, it's the idea of like mind mapping and just throwing things out there and trying to look for connections in sporadic ways.
Yeah.
But I did it even like printing out my code books and going through them and writing thematically what I could see emerging. I think even that process was much more tactile and material and supportive and helping me think in a very different way than just being on en vivo in the computer was serving me.
Yeah, that's right. I still have we called it a research diary, but really it was just my notebook for brain dumping.
Yeah.
And I'm not a visual person in terms of drawing. And when it comes to something like a mind map, I would rather use something like Miro or MindMeister, because then I can, I always get frustrated when I draw something and I'm like, oh, but I didn't want that there. So at least at the digital tool, I could drag it around and put it where I wanted it.
I mean, the caveat on all of this too is I think everyone has their own tendencies of how they can work.
Yeah.
Effectively too, and I am definitely a visual thinker, so maybe that doesn't work for everyone, but I know there is something very, very potent about the material, physical, tangible thinking and just getting off the computer.
My brain dump book, I'm a lister, like it was a lot of dot points, which is visual in its way, but the way that worked for me was always I would rewrite the lists, so there would be brain dump, go to this supervisor chat, write that down, read this article, write this down. And then I would have all these loose, disconnected dot points that I would then go through and synthesize into the next list.
Yeah.
Which would get things added to it.
That's so
resynthesized.
Yeah.
Add more things. And the list just kept growing, shrinking, but it just became richer and richer and richer. And that you can trace through if you look at my brain dump notebook, which is why I'll never get rid of it. And it's interesting. It's another thing that I tell my students is I may never pick up that book for the purposes of research again. That might just always be a memento.
Yeah.
But it's theoretically possible that there was something that I wrote down in that notebook once upon a time that I never used for anything. It went into the list and it never got synthesized into the next list. Maybe I pick that up 5 years from now and that sparks an idea of something new. Yeah. And if I hadn't written it down, however important I thought it was at the time, it would have been gone forever. Yeah. And so same thing with the kids when we're doing the brainstorming, the classic design thinking with the Post-it notes and they're all everywhere. I tell them don't throw any of this away or take photos. Like make sure you've got a record of all these things that you've written down, because you never know. You'll get to the end and you'll be like, weren't we talking about something to do? Because you went in a different direction than you expected. Yeah. And so it didn't seem important when you were brainstorming, but now suddenly it is. And if you didn't write it down, maybe you forget it. Yeah. When you're doing things like plotting napkin pitches, which are very concise business plans for your idea, you're going to have, okay, you've got this one idea you really like. We're going to make an app. Yeah. That's what we all need, another app. Yeah. That is an example of like jumping to solutions. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you're married to this idea of the app. Yeah. But then I've forced you to make 2 or 3. Yeah. And so you've got a second and a third idea, and maybe you've phoned in developing that napkin pitch because you want to do the app. Yeah. But I've forced you to do it, and the reason is there's some reason you didn't want to do it. Yeah. And if you are critical and interrogate your thought process of why didn't I want to pursue this other solution, that will necessarily teach you something about the one you did want to pursue. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just looking at this and it's confirmation bias. You're just looking for reasons to make this work. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. It's like, how do you critically assess what you are going for? I mean, that's what I love about just using something simple like the desirability, feasibility, viability framework. You kind of got some sort of measure to go, well, what is working here? It's not just what I think's going to work, but actually, is it desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? Mm-hmm. And it's a super, super, super handy concept. But the other thing from a practical perspective, and because this is a PhD podcast as well,
from the grounded theory perspective, memo writing is also about traceability and to show how your ideas have developed and how you're constructing your theory. And I think if I counted all my visualizations and sketches as part of that traceability. And in fact, I feel like in those moments were the moments where I was most deeply reflexive and reflective on what was going on. And that is where those creative leaps happened. That's when I was able to go, oh, okay, I see those connections. I can see that theory, like all that thematic or conceptual framing coming to life in that way. I can see and explain the dimensions of what's going on there and what's contributing to it. And so, yeah, I think there's something really useful in thinking about that, in taking time to think and sketching and pausing on whatever it is you're working on. It doesn't even have to be a PhD. Often they're the times where you make the biggest creative leaps because you're giving your mind the chance to make connections they wouldn't ordinarily. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
And it's the one time in your life, I don't know if you've thought about this, but the one time in your life where you can just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
In the way you want to do it.
Yeah. But end. Like, can it end? Please. It didn't.
On to the next.
It was lovely and I love the experience and very grateful. But I tell you what, the greatest frustration for me is I couldn't manage it like I could, a consulting project or a project in the normal way. It doesn't work like that. You get to your final results when you do. And I think having some structure around it was good. And it really helped me to focus and bring it in at the end of the day. But yeah, that's another thing. May it end, please. Yes. I don't want to be stuck in this forever. Thank you.
Well, that feels like a nice natural place to segue into the last thing I want to ask you.
Yes.
Which is just, where to from here? You said September you think you'll be conferred. I'm not sure. We're recording this in early May. I'm going to say Dr. So-and-so. I'm not going to say Dr. your name because I feel like it's bad juju.
Yeah.
But thereafter, same thing. When another colleague of mine was at that same point, I remember I got them an ink pen, and it had a little spot that you could engrave, and I was very close to getting it engraved with Dr. their name. Yeah. But then in the end, I was like, let me know when you're done. Then I'll get it engraved. Yeah. I don't want to jinx anything. No bad juju, just only green lights.
Yeah.
So where to from here? What do you see when you look ahead?
Well, at the moment, and I was joking with one of my colleagues today, who had done his PhD. Tim mentioned him before. I said, is there such thing as like PhD brain like damage? Because I've just been so tired. Like, I think there is definitely a big physical, mental fatigue that I'm experiencing right now. And granted, I probably chose to finish my PhD in the most intense way, but that was also a product of the funding winding up before finishing, and that's also not a great way to design funding. Please support your PhD students until they're finished, because it adds a whole lot of stress, and it's already below minimum wage anyway, so there's a whole conversation in that. Grateful to have it, but when it ended, I had to. It was a necessity to earn money. So I was working 3 days a week and 2 days a week, and weekends to finish off my thesis and wrap it up. So it was great that Snowmelt accommodated all of that with me, and were very supportive and understanding. But I think that's one thing I have been very conscious of, is to recover. So there's been this sense of liminality, like I'm kind of in this space of not quite finishing PhD, starting back into a professional role, and now having had 3 or 4 year experience, you can't be anything other than changed, I think, having gone through a PhD. So, but what is that? So I feel like there's this kind of just settling of what is now going to be me and my practice, and that will continue to evolve, but also trying to appreciate that on some level. I think there's definitely this sense of go. You just have to get the PhD done, get the work, and just go. But I think I'm just very much feeling that. It's an embodied state. Yeah. So rest is what I'm excited about. Recovery is the word I've been talking to my colleagues and friends about. But at the same time, now that I have completed this PhD, I have a platform to continue conversations with others in the field, other academics who are thinking about this, other practitioners who are thinking about this. And for me, the PhD wasn't about just having a title. It was about joining conversations and contributing to knowledge and contributing to the next generation of design, management thinkers that want to work with creativity and design in some way. So I'm really excited about doing that. I'm really excited about working with great people, and that could be great people that I know within academia. That might be with great people in industry. And I'm really interested to kind of crack this reverse model of industry working into the university. And that means going for grants, working with industry partners who are willing to fund research. And that could be on any challenge, like design can tackle any challenge. So give the opportunity to look at any kind of social problem going on, aged care, health crises, climate change, any of that, to fund really important research using design methodologies. So, I've been talking to my colleagues here at UTS. We've been looking at grants and trying to do that work in reverse with an industry partner like ourselves. Continuing to teach, I'm really excited about the transformation and renewal subject I'm doing in the Executive MBA, and looking at some of this reflexivity and complexity theories, and thinking about what does it mean to be an effective leader or manager when we think about our roles as dealing with complexity as a status, as just a general, that's how we have to operate. And let's just see where it goes. I'm hoping to publish work. Getting time for that will be interesting, as is the issue for everyone. Doesn't matter, even if you're in academia, getting time to write on papers is a challenge. I appreciate that. So that's really where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about my team and being able to work in systemic design. I think it's a very exciting space where design meets systems thinking and strategy, and the work that I have been involved in the work that I've seen from my team is just really exciting to see how visualization of systems can really help with strategy conversations. So I'm also really excited about that and doing that work with my team.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's so interesting, like, just to bring it full circle and go back to when we spoke 2.5 years ago, just how far things have come, and you had ideas about what you thought you might want to do. Now you're actually doing them. It's all worked out very well, which is, for me, as your friend, it's been very fun for me to see.
Oh, thanks, Greg. And that's really nice to hear that reflection, because when you're in it, it's really hard to see it.
Yeah.
But I did have very strong intentions and ideas, and they may not be the norm. Like, they're not choosing one path or the other. And I know that that's not necessarily an easy path, but for me, that's where it's most rewarding, and I've been able to do it to this point. So let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much you're the first repeat guest.
Oh.
On the podcast.
Well, hello to everyone who made it through the first one. And if you've made it through the second one, well, congratulations, and thank you for joining us and me.
I think that for anyone out there thinking about doing a PhD, or maybe they're in the thick of it where you were 2.5 years ago, and they're thinking like, oh, I need some kind of hope, for lack of a better word. I need to know it could be okay. Can't guarantee that it will be, but I need to know it could be okay. I think it would be, if they went back and did listen to that first episode and hear what you were thinking then, and maybe it would be interesting for you too to listen to these back to back when I put this one out. And
you know what? I think I will. But if you are listening and you are thinking about, well, what would Leanne say to me at this point if you're halfway through it or you're just about to start? I would say just be on the train. Use the train as a metaphor. And stay on the train. And when it gets tough, just remember you're on it. All you need to do is be on it. Every day you're moving forward. Even if you're taking a break, you're still thinking about it. So just stay on the train and just know you'll get to your destination, and wherever that is going to be, well, that you kind of actually name that station to a large degree. So be excited about that. But yeah, that was the way I thought about it when I started, and it really helped me stay focused. I was like, and also reward myself to say, oh, I've got this far. Yeah, I've been on the train, like and just keep staying on it because you'll get to the end. But I'm not saying it wasn't tough, but that's, part of the PhD is the grueling, long nature of it, and I think just keeping that in mind, that if you know it's going to come to an end at some point, even the hardest things will move forward and you will get past that moment in time. And yeah, so go for it, I say.